Hey there, friends. Fritz here, and I want to talk to you more today about Blazor. Now, we talked a little bit about how to get started and what it's good for, and why you might want to migrate some of your existing desktop applications over to Blazor. But today, I want to take that Blazor application and go a little bit further with it. Let's actually go to the cloud, and I want to talk about Blazor running on top of Azure. Microsoft Azure, it's the cloud service that Microsoft builds and manages that runs worldwide in more than 30 data centers. There's opportunities for you to connect your application to all kinds of different things, and it's so easy to do. When you take your Blazor application and deploy it with Microsoft Azure, you've now got the opportunity to run it anywhere you'd like in the world, have it replicated, have it run and scale very easily in a bunch of these different data centers that are available to you. That gives you the power to control with just a few clicks of your mouse exactly how much Azure you use, and importantly, how much you don't use. You control how much you spend and how much you want to run for your application. That gives you a lot of power over an on-premises deployment. While you might have the security and isolation of your intellectual property running inside of your own data center, you get the worldwide accessibility and the instant scalability when you run on a cloud service like Microsoft Azure. Let's get started by talking about the easiest service for us to use to get an application deployed and running on Microsoft Azure, and that's called Azure App Service. App Service lets you deploy your application to Windows or Linux. You can package your application inside of a container if you'd like, and you can control the scale, the size of the processor, the amount of memory that your application uses, and how many instances of those servers you want deployed to run your application. You can scale up and you can scale out the application. Let's go over to Visual Studio and take a look at a simple application and what we can do to publish it to Microsoft Azure, and then how we can scale it up, how we can scale it out, and make it even easier to deploy using GitHub Actions. All right, here I am in Visual Studio, and I just started a brand new application. I don't want to go into anything fancy here. I want to show you just how easy it is to get started and deploy your first application. And we can do this with the very basic template that's out here. Get started and deploy something out to Azure and show you just what's involved. I'm looking at the overview page for this project, and I want to go to the publish page so that I can start going through a publish process. Now, I can get to this same location from my project. If you're in another project, you can easily close all this down and you can get into that same overview window by right-clicking on your project and choosing overview. But we're going to get in and talk about the publish wizard here for a minute. So I'm going to click on publish, and I'm going to end up at that same screen that we saw just a minute ago. And it's right there at the top, publish to Azure. I'll choose that and select next, and I have my choice of various Azure services that I can publish to, including that virtual machine if you want to run just like another server out there that you control and manage out on Azure. That's nice if you're used to running a server and managing all the updates and all of those capabilities. When you choose Azure App Service, all of those upgrades and management capabilities fade away for you. You don't have to take care of the server. They're managed for you by the folks at Microsoft. So I'm going to choose to deploy this to Azure App Service running Windows. And I'm going to choose next, and it's going to tell me that we need to go and get our subscription set up here. I'm going to re-enter my credentials real quick. And now I'll go and create a new instance for me to deploy to. So I'll choose this Create New button. And it gives me options here of what I want to name the new app service I want to deploy to. So I'll name it Sample App Service Fritz. And I'll put this in a new resource group. All right. and I'll give it a new hosting plan. That's actually more like the server that it's going to run on. That's fine. I'll give it whatever name. And now I can choose the region that it will deploy to. And I like to deploy things out of East US too. I'm located on the eastern United States. I'm in the mid-Atlantic region, and East US 2 I know is located geographically close to me, so I'm going to choose that one. Now I can choose the size of the server. How many cores? How much RAM would I like? And there's different options that are available to me here. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to choose a B2 that has 2 cores and 3.5 gig of RAM. For your application, you might choose something larger. You might be testing and want to run something much smaller. It's up to you what version you select. We'll let this go and create all the resources for us, and I'll fast forward through this part of the video. All right, there we go. And now I can choose where I want to put it. I just created that service, so yes, I want to put it there. I can choose a deployment slot. These are helpful if we want to deploy things into a staging area for testing before we go and run it in production, our production internet-facing area. So I'll just let that finish, and it's going to create my publish profile. And now it has this information for me about how we're going to deploy this application. It's all ready to go. I can just click this publish button, and it will send that up to the cloud and make my application built, have it published in release mode, and send it out to Microsoft Azure so that it can be run and anybody in the world will be able to access it. And there it is. After just a few minutes of it going through the publish process, building and deploying all of my content, it's out there running on Azure. You can see I have an azurewebsites.net address that it's located at, and the default template is out here running just fine. Anybody is able to access it and interact with it. Now, if you're going to try and browse to this website, I've already taken it down. You're not going to be able to get to it. Okay, that's not available out there. But I can now manage this and grow it as need be to work with other folks inside my organization. There's all kinds of options that are available. I can constrain who can access this to a VPN so that only certain folks from within my office are allowed to access and interact with it. I can put different constraints on it security-wise so that only authorized employees are allowed to log in. Let me take you over to the Azure portal, and we'll take a look at this application running on Azure. So here I am on the portal, and I can see my sample app service, Fritz, just like I named it in Visual Studio, and it's over here running in Azure, and I can see all the features that are enabled and disabled for it. I can see how it's deployed. I can see the domains that it's being served with. I can even add custom domains if I want my application to answer on a good, strong, publicly facing domain name. Something like c#fritz.com. Something like that, right? I can see my IP addresses are hiding down here. Now they're behind my camera here. That's okay. But trust me that the IP addresses are there. And I can see exactly the hosting plan that it's running on. And notice there's only one instance of it, and it's running on a basic B2. And I've got this button here, scale up. So when that day comes that, gosh, there are so many people using our website, we need more power to support it, I can click this button, and it gives me the option to start to scale up. And I see all the resources and prices above me to indicate just how much I can get into to run my application. I can put it on something larger. I can go up bigger with more CPUs. I can go to 32 CPUs and 256 gig of RAM here if I wanted, and spend a lot of money to run it on just one server out there if I wanted. There's all kinds of options that are available when you run with app service. But this is just if I wanted to run one server, right? I can scale out and tell it I want to run on multiple servers. So I have this option here to scale out. And when I'm running on a more advanced plan, I can choose based on traffic that it can scale out and take up more servers if I wanted to. And I can set up rules and tell it, here's how many instances I want. And I get a nice little slider here that I can drag across and have it deploy multiple copies when I click save. For those folks who are a little bit older, might have been around the tech industry from before the times of cloud services were available out there, and this type of elastic scaling, this was something that would take you a whole weekend to do, and you had to plan for it, ordering servers ahead of time, having them delivered, install them into your data center, coordinate with folks to make sure that the hardware was all up and running before you could move your application over there and start taking advantage of those new resources. I can do this literally in seconds and have an updated, faster, bigger version of my web application running out there on the cloud. Scaling my application like this is just one of the many benefits of going out to Azure. Let me also show you another thing that we can do inside of Visual Studio, using that publish profile and taking advantage of something called continuous deployment. I'm back in Visual Studio. I've added my project to a Git repository locally and published that out to GitHub. Now I can actually interact with this, and I'll create a new profile that does the exact same thing. I want to publish to Azure, Azure App Service on Windows. I'll choose that same sample location. And now I have an option to publish with GitHub Actions workflow. I'll choose finish there, and what this is going to do is generate a script for me so that every time I commit changes to this repository, when there's a change that's merged into my main branch, it's going to publish all of those changes out to my application. This is really important. This means that as my application grows, as we commit new features, we automatically get the website updated with those new features. Now, you can set up your own controls and capabilities inside of your own organization, so you have processes that determine exactly who can merge and deploy things out to production, who can take requests into that main branch and publish them out. But it was very easy for me to go and generate the script here, and it now knows that there's changes waiting to go out and be deployed using GitHub Actions. It's really great stuff that's available to you out there. All right, App Service is so easy to use, and it's just the tip of getting started. It lets you get your feet wet with being able to scale up your application. You saw how we can get bigger and bigger servers that have richer and richer capabilities, more processor, more RAM. That's amazing to use. And also how we can scale out and get multiple copies of our application running out there. Now, of course, when you start to introduce multiple copies of your application, that means that you need to do some extra coding in your application to handle if it's being served by server A or server D, or maybe it gets routed to server E. How does it handle that? How does your application behave when it gets juggled between these different services? It's a great wide world out there on the cloud that allows you to scale and grow your application and run in many, many different ways, all with a few clicks of the mouse inside of the Azure portal, or you can use a command line as well. I hope you liked this video. I've got a bunch more coming that are going to talk to you about the things you can do to grow your Blazor applications. I hope you tune in for my next one.